Yo. Good to be back tonight. Seriously, like, really good to be back. Couple things on the mind tonight. We really are, there's different dead periods in the, I suppose, in the sports calendar, and there's, what would be the best example of that? I suppose the All-Star break in baseball, that's certainly not a fun one. I mean, there's nothing going on, right? I mean, other than the All-Star game itself. Should we have the home run derby? What should they do to improve it? All that crap. And really the time in between the draft and that is tough. Because at least after the All-Star break, you know that we're going to be getting onto training camp soon. There's all kinds of storylines, things to dig into, whatever. But, Mariners are kind of regressing right now. And there's a handful of stories that are out there that I do want to discuss after we speak with one Brady Henderson. Brady and I and our friend Todd were out the other night at this place in Ballard eating some pizza. And I didn't voice this concern at the time, Brady, because I didn't want to make anybody feel bad. But we had this, I guess, was it a deep dish or a pan pizza, whatever it was. And the sauce, my only objection was the sauce came out on top of the pizza. Now, I'm pretty good with toppings. You can usually put whatever you want on it. Like, I'm not an anchovy guy, but I don't really know anybody who is, so that's not a concern. Kalamata olives, bell peppers, feta, all that stuff, terrific. The main reason why I bring it up is because I'm the type of person that if it's not, and this may surprise you, Brady, if it's not entirely necessary, I'm not going to make a stink about anything, like in front of my friends, or, if I go to the gym and they want me to wear a mask, even though I'm vaccinated, I'll just play along. I'm that kind of guy, even though maybe some others would. Are there any situations where you just kind of say, what the heck, man? Like, I gotta stand my ground here.
I'm in terms of restaurant stuff and dining experiences, I'm pretty forgiving. I've worked in that industry a long time ago, and not for a very long time, but I guess I have, empathy for the fact that people, servers and cooks and whatnot are, a lot of times they have a lot on their plate. So I think it's easy for some people seem to take it as a personal affront if not everything goes exactly according to plan when they're out eating. But I don't really get too mad because I guess I just figure that they've got a lot on their plate. So I'm usually fairly relaxed when it comes to that. Although I will say this, the night before, I won't go into details here, but the night before we met up in Ballard.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I went to another restaurant and I was overcharged by nearly $100, and so I am not going to let that one slide. I've started to try to recoup my try to rectify that. But normally, if it's just a minor issue like pizza coming out with the sauce on top, I'll go with it.
Well, I mean, I should, again, it's not like it was pizza, so it's not like it was that big of a deal. Now, if you get overcharged by $100 at a time, I mean, are you somebody who looks at your receipt? Because I guess if you're signing the check, you probably look at the receipt. But would you do or do not make a big deal out of that?
Well, not at the time. I didn't want to make a scene at the time. I just figured it was close to where I live, and so I figured I'll just come back and take care of this later. I was also had a couple drinks, and so I was like, wait a minute, I don't think this seems right, but I can't be entirely sure. And I didn't get an itemized receipt. That was the big part of it. That would have really cleared the issue in the moment.
Are you, do you work hard for your money these days? As I was saying before the show started, or as it was starting, this is a pretty dead time on the sports calendar. Like even post Super Bowl, in between Super Bowl and free agency isn't too bad. There's usually something or other going on, some post Super Bowl fallout or whatever. But right now it can be tough, even with rookie mini camps going on. First question. Well, actually, go ahead and answer that first. Do you find that you don't have to work that hard for your pay?
Well, this is definitely one of the deader times in the NFL calendar. And, like you said, right after the season, you've got, post Super Bowl fallout. A lot of times there's, coaching changes, coordinator changes. And then you've got, a few weeks after the Super Bowl, you've got the combine, and the combine leads right into free agency. And then free agency goes until basically you transition into pre-draft stuff. And then you've got the immediate post-draft stuff. And so, 2-3 weeks after the draft, that kind of is the start of one of the more dead periods, especially when you cover a team that only had 3 draft picks. And so that's why,
right.
The rookie mini camp, it was only 2 days. And so that was, I think it really was really different than it normally is. And only having 3 draft picks to write about. Now, Darrell Taylor was, I think, the biggest story of anybody there. And he's not a rookie, but this is one of the dead periods. And then the big one is really from the end of minicamp in June, which is usually mid to late June. There's nothing that happens once that ends, and the start of training camp, which is usually 6 or so weeks later.
What do you think the big deal is about this whole players not wanting to go to these, well, not the rookie mini camps, but the OTAs themselves? Sometimes there are issues out there that I feel like, a big stink gets made of them, but the majority of people don't actually care. But then you got Tom Brady carrying on about it. What was this? I mean, what do you think is motivating that?
I think, this is all happening obviously in a pandemic, and that was the stated reason why players, did not want to do that. But I think that players for a long time have been looking for ways to get out of off-season stuff. And for, the stuff that we're talking about is voluntary. It's voluntary off-season workouts, which includes, the 10 OTA practices that teams can have every off-season. And, they're technically voluntary, but the expectation is sort of that they show up. And so, players really don't like doing that because, most of them don't live in Seattle. And so you're talking about, coming in and giving up a big chunk of your off season as a player to come in and do voluntary stuff. So I think, it's not something that they want to do anyways. And I think the pandemic and having done all of this stuff virtually last off season, this is what they said in their statement, that, that showed them that you can be fine throughout the season, and you can get everything you need to get done virtually, and you don't have to come in. And so I think that the pandemic, it gave them a reason, a pretty credible reason, I would say, to say, hey, they're just not going to do it this year. Now, the other part of that with the Seahawks, this is why it was easy for them to do that, is, unlike a lot of teams, the Seahawks do not build off-season workout bonuses into their contracts. It's just not something they do. Green Bay Packers do that because, they know that if they don't entice players monetarily to come for those voluntary off-season workouts, well, nobody lives in Green Bay in the offseason when the weather is miserable.
Right.
So that's one way that they're going to get guys to come to Green Bay and take part in those. The Seahawks, they give out bonus money in other ways, per game roster bonuses, and this is all inside baseball, so I'll stop there. But the point being is that I think it was an easier decision for the Seahawks to make because not showing up to those voluntary workouts was not costing them money. There was one exception, Quandre Diggs. He had those in his contract from Detroit. But by and large, this was not any sort of financial sacrifice for the Seahawks.
Now, the coaches, I guess I shouldn't say for the most part, I should say they're all there, right? I guess answer. Okay.
And the rookies are there too.
Right. Now, So the rookie, is it I'm talking about not rookie minicamp, but OTAs themselves.
Yeah, the rookies are still there. Yeah. And this was kind of an interesting issue, is that, the veteran players put out that statement and made that decision, made that vote before the draft. And so it was a question of, well, what are the rookies going to do? Are they going to feel beholden to follow in the veterans' footsteps? And, I talked to one veteran player who said, they weren't putting any sort of pressure on the rookies because, and it makes sense because, the rookies weren't even drafted by when the veteran players voted on that. They weren't part of that decision, and they're just in such a different situation. Talked to another agent who made the point that no agent is going to tell, a guy drafted on day 3 to not show up when, showing up and taking part in these practices is their best chance and only chance of making the team. So rookies are just in such a different situation than the veterans are. And so that's why they're there and the veteran players for the most part are not.
Right. So I guess either way, I was going to ask you if it would be a waste of time even for the coaches to be there if nobody was showing up. But if the young players are there and basically anybody who isn't like a built-in part of the nucleus of the team, are there any coaches that think that this is unnecessary aside from the rookies, like who kind of side with the players, like, we could do without it, that kind of thing?
Coaches who think what's unnecessary.
Who think that that OTAs for veteran players, because right now they're voluntary, but if Brady and not you, Brady, but Tom Brady and some of these veterans want to do away with them altogether, are there any coaches that agree with that, or do they think like, we should be practicing as much as possible?
Yeah, I doubt that you would find a coach who would turn down any opportunity to practice. Now, maybe they would disagree on the tempo and how hard you need to go in practice, but I think that they would take any opportunity they can to get guys on the field and to work with them.
How hard do they actually work? Because the reason why I keep referring to Tom Brady is he was, I guess, one of the guys I saw actually comment on this, and he compared these OTAs. He said, yeah, these are unnecessary. You would never see a baseball player throwing 95 miles an hour in December, which is a bad analogy, really, because a baseball player that throws 95 miles an hour is probably A, a pitcher, and B, that would indicate like, game types, regular season type, speed and situation. And I don't think that they're going at that speed in these OTAs. No. Like what are they? They're not even in pads, are they?
No, for the rookie minicamp, it was just helmets, and I think it's going to be that way I can't remember the exact timetable, but for at least a little while longer. They're not going to put on pads for a while, and even when they do put on pads, if that happens in like minicamp in June, the 3-day mandatory minicamp, they're not tackling all the way to the ground. It may be, you sort of pop, but don't bring a guy to the ground. Remember they've gotten in trouble. They've gotten fined. I think they got docked a draft pick one year that the Seahawks did because they were, and this wasn't necessarily, I don't think it was necessarily the coaches encouraging this, but there was too much contact, and more so than what is defined as allowable per the rules. And so they got in pretty big trouble for it.
Would you say that the flag football league that you play in has more contact than what these guys do in OTAs?
The flag, oh God, I haven't played flag football in a while, but
oh really? I thought you did.
I did. That was like 10 years ago.
Oh.
It probably has about this
less contact, really.
Yeah, because when you're like simulating a tackle, you still might kind of pop a guy or wrap him up, and you're not doing that in flag football. You're just reaching, and in my case, a lot of times grabbing air because the guy I'm trying to tackle or guy whose flag I'm trying to grab is way faster and quicker than me.
It's like a skill unto itself. It's just grabbing the flag when you think about it.
It would be fun. It would be kind of interesting if like that was a way to revolutionize the off-season workout program.
Yeah.
Get these guys in flags. it would do nothing. It's not like it would be pointless for NFL teams because there's no reason for them to
learn how to
try to practice that.
Exactly.
But it would be kind of a fun visual.
It might even disorient them. It'd be a waste of time. It's like, well, whatever I learned back in May was now worthless. Darrell Taylor, present, accounted for. That's good. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was. And by the way, as an aside, when you said that, it reminded me of Flight of the Conchords when Murray would bring in the guys for the band meeting. And if you've seen it, you only know it if you've seen it.
I've not seen it. I don't even know what
you're talking about. Sounds like you haven't seen it. Flight of the Conchords was this really funny show on HBO about these New Zealand musicians who are just kind of dumb and don't have a lot of talent. And they had a manager named Murray who would bring him in, and he would take roll for the band meetings, even though there was only 2 band members, and they would say present whenever he would call their name. Anyways, total aside there.
Actually, that sounds maybe funnier than it is, but I'll allow it.
It's a you had to be there moment.
Yeah, I got you.
You had to be there joke. Daryl Taylor, yeah. I mean, he was like the guy that I think anybody there who was watching just from the berm probably was watching Daryl Taylor more than anybody, just because, seeing him, like, we didn't see him practice at all last year. Remember, he was on the non-football injury list the entire year. He only started practicing the week of Seattle's wild card game, which they lost. And I think I don't think those practices were open to the media. So that was the first time literally that reporters had seen him practice. And it wasn't just that you finally saw him in the flesh. It was that you saw him working at a new position. And Pete Carroll had sort of casually mentioned him, I think a few weeks ago, maybe during the pre-draft or right after the draft, as an option to play the strong side linebacker. But it didn't seem like he gave no indication that was definitely the plan. And so it just made it a little bit more, I don't think it's set in stone that he's going to play there, but it gave a little more just credence to the idea of Daryl Taylor being their strong side linebacker this year. And he's still going to rush off the edge as a Leo defensive end. But now they're seeing if he can also play strong side linebacker on early downs, which is the dual role that Bruce Irvin filled previously for the Seahawks.
So what would the starting linebackers be? Would it be Brooks, Wagner?
It would be Brooks. Yeah, Brooks on the weak side where he played last year, Wagner in the middle where he's always been, and then Daryl Taylor on the strong side on early downs. And, when they go to nickel, they take one linebacker off the field, bring in a 5th defensive back, and then typically what they've done, depending on who they have filling that strong side linebacker role, when it was Bruce Irvin, remember during the final 3 seasons of his first stint with the Seahawks, he would play strong side linebacker on early downs, and then he would, line up as a defensive end and put his hand in the dirt and rush the passer in passing situations as a defensive end. And then when it was somebody else, Mike Morgan played that position one year, Michael Wilhoit, those guys would just come off the field entirely. And so I think they really want to make that. And I'll back up. Last year when it was KJ Wright, they would mostly keep him and Wagner on the field and they would take Brooks off. But obviously they want to give Brooks, they want to play Brooks more. He was their first round pick last year and played really well. They want to keep his speed on the field, I think. And so I think that's one reason why they haven't re-signed KJ Wright.
Yeah.
Is they want to be faster. They want to give Brooks more opportunities. And I think the other reason is they want that strong side linebacker to fill the dual Bruce Irvin role of being a strong side guy on early downs and a pass rusher in passing situations.
So I'll come back to Taylor in a second, but what do you think will or won't happen with KJ?
If you would have asked me this a couple weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, and I think somebody did, and it seemed like it was 50-50 that he would come back. And the reason I say that is because he's been in Seattle he lives here. He has a family here. Most of the big money has already been spent. And so I just looked at it and said, he's probably going to be unsigned for a while. And if he's still out there, if you could get KJ Wright back for, a few $1 million, I just wondered if that would be too difficult for the Seahawks to pass up. And if Wright's got nothing else going on, then why wouldn't he do it? It might take swallowing his pride because he had said that he wanted, he had indicated that he wanted a market value deal, which I took to mean he wanted a raise from what he was making the last couple of years, but it doesn't seem like that's in play. And so I would have thought a few weeks ago that it's maybe 50-50. Now I think it might take, an injury situation to Taylor or Taylor just not, for whatever reason, not showing them that he can play that spot. But even then, they've got Cody Barton, a guy that they drafted in the 3rd round. So it doesn't seem likely to me that KJ Wright's back.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about rotation, right? at defensive end or whatever it is, Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett from years ago. With a linebacker, it's a little bit different. I mean, even if they did find a way to re-sign him at like minimal money, getting on the field would be extremely difficult, it seems. I mean, you mentioned Cody Barton, who, and I'm not really sure what his future in the league is, but would KJ be behind him on the depth chart?
I think if they brought him back, yeah, I mean, they would probably bring him back to be their starter. I mean, who knows what arrangement it would be. I just don't think I don't think he would come back in a backup role.
It would be hard for him to start though, because if you know that Wagner and Brooks are going to start, I mean, I guess, you know what, maybe I shouldn't, etch in stone Darrell Taylor starting day one and, away he goes. So could that be a reason for KJ or for the Seahawks to have interest in KJ, just to sort of like to have him there available in case things don't go according to plan?
Yeah, but I don't know if KJ would sign for.
But he wouldn't be the pass rusher anyway, so that wouldn't make sense.
Right? Yeah, and that's why I think that they want Taylor in there, because they want that guy to fill, the dual role of linebacker and early downs, pass rusher. Remember, that's why they signed Bruce Irvin last year, and Irvin was set to fill that role until he tore his ACL, I think, in the second week, and then you saw them move KJ Wright over from the weak side to the strong side. And he was just filling the linebacker role. He wasn't rushing the passer. Yeah. And then, that's when they put Jordan Brooks at the weak side spot that Wright had moved over from.
So I thought Brooks had a great year last year for a rookie. I mean, he seemed to fit the mold right away and got better. I mean, it improved. He can chase guys down. He can chase down ball carriers. He always seems to be involved. Not always, but a lot of the time when there's a fumble, wherever the tackle is made, good tackler anyway. So with Darrell Taylor now, given that his career's kind of had a false start here, I mean, he's a high round pick, so there's got to be expectations on him. But how are those expectations tempered? Just knowing that he's had this injury and, he's a year behind.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder of, that's hanging over this whole thing, is that he didn't play last year. So he's effectively a rookie.
It's like they had another pick this year, Brady.
Yeah.
Basically,
yeah. He's not technically a rookie, but he effectively is, because he didn't play last year and he's coming off a very serious injury. He had played through a stress fracture in his fibula during his final season at Tennessee. And then he had surgery, a few weeks after the season in late January to have a titanium rod inserted in there. And so the Seahawks, remember, they brought him in for a pre-draft visit before NFL teams shut those down. So they got a good look at him medically, and they felt like he was going to be able to recover in time to be a big part of their pass rush rotation. Obviously he wasn't, but the thing that I remember writing a story at the time about just looking at how rare it is for rookies to come in and get 8 sacks right away. And I always use 8 sacks as the reference point, because that's what Bruce Irvin got as a rookie in 2012. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. Let me see if I can maybe pull it up.
I can look it up as you're talking.
I'm talking, but it was here you go. I'll give it to you here. So this was from a story I wrote last offseason. So only 16 rookies over the past 10 seasons have gotten 8 sacks, and that includes Bruce Irvin in 2012. But of those 16, 10 were drafted in the first half of the first round. So in other words, it's pretty unlikely to get 8 sacks as a rookie. And most of the guys who do it are very, very high draft picks. And by the way, those numbers I just gave you, those were from last offseason. No rookies got 8 sacks this past season. Yeah, okay. Chase Young had 7.5. Was the most of anybody. And so the point there is that it's very rare for rookies to come in and make this huge impact right away, especially when it's not guys drafted, in early in the first round.
I think that there's a natural inclination. I have to catch myself from doing this to think, and comparing what they were able to accomplish defensively last year to whatever happens this year is to say like, oh, well, Daryl Taylor's coming back. We're good.
Yeah.
But you don't know that. You hope that that's the case. What would you, as you look at the secondary now, I guess moving back a position group, would you, because DJ Reed to me was the biggest difference maker mid-season, other than a favorable schedule that helped them to improve, right? Once that corner was solidified. So, I mean, we're kind of remaking the Legion of Boom here all over again. Should there be maybe a grace period as to how long it takes them to gel once the season starts? Whoever it ends up being back there.
Yeah, and I think they've got to see who it is. I think those two cornerback spots are pretty wide open, and I would imagine that as high as they are on DJ Reed, they love the way he played last year. They love his attitude and his mentality. I imagine that combine that and the fact that they really don't have a lot of sure things at that spot. I imagine that he's going to be starting at one of those spots. I also kind of get the impression that they are wary of having two short guys starting. And remember, DJ Reed is, I think, 5'9", so that's why it was surprising mid-year last year when they put him on the outside, just because we all know it's one of the hallmarks of that secondary under Pete Carroll has been big cornerbacks on the outside. There's always been kind of a strict height requirement, 6 feet and above and 32-inch arms or longer, and obviously, DJ Reed was none of those things. And so, it seemed like when they put him on the outside that they were starting to kind of lax those standards. And then that became clear when they took Trey Brown in the 4th round. But I think that I doubt that they want to have two short guys starting on the outside. That would be such a departure for them. So I'm kind of under the impression that Trey Brown, their 4th round pick, is competing with DJ Reed for one of those spots. And then on the other side, it's Trey Flowers, Ahkello Witherspoon, who they had identified as the free agent target that they wanted if they weren't able to re-sign Shaquille Griffin. So I kind of think it's Reed and Brown vying on one side, Witherspoon, Flowers, maybe Pierre Desir competing for that other spot.
They can't get off that Trey Flowers train, can they? Like is he here just, come hell or high water, or is this year it for him, or what do you think happens with him if in the event that he doesn't, perform as a starter?
I think that he's one of those players that is better than his worst moments and his harshest critics would suggest. I mean, go back to 2019. Remember he played poorly in the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. And everybody, it seemed like there was a bit of revisionist history to where people looked at those two games and said, well, this guy just can't play. And my counterpoint was, he really struggled. And he especially in that divisional round loss at Green Bay, Devontae Adams just had his number, all night. But I mean, I didn't recall people thinking that Trey Flowers is just for the majority of that season up until the playoffs. I didn't remember thinking, man, Trey Flowers is just overmatched. So
you don't spend enough time on Twitter then, obviously, because I remember it, and the people on Twitter are right always about everything.
There are a lot of professional scouts and professional talent evaluators on Twitter. But the point being in all this is I think that Trey Flowers is an NFL cornerback. Now, the interesting thing there, he got like this CBA mandated raise to over $2 million. It was this raises that guys get in the 4th year of their rookie contracts if they meet certain playing time thresholds. So he's scheduled to make over $2 million this year. And if he's not if he doesn't win a starting job, I could see the Seahawks viewing that salary as prohibitively high for a backup. That's sort of what happened last year with David Moore. Remember, they asked David Moore to take a pay cut right before the season started because he was going to make a couple $1 million, and he was probably going to play as much, if not more, as their number 3 receiver than a number 3 cornerback would. And so if they deem that to be high for David Moore, I could see them deeming that to be too high for Trey Flowers. Again, if he doesn't end up winning a starting job.
Question from
the point being is that he could be vulnerable to to being released, I think, if he doesn't win a starting job.
Yeah. From the chat here, Beastquake 2011 asks, what happens to Taylor's contract? It still ends at year 4. No year is added when he was injured throughout. Maybe I'm not sure if maybe Beastquake is asking, is the clock already started on his contract?
So I believe what happens is he becomes a restricted free agent after the 2023.
In like March of 23?
Yes. So he has, so the Seahawks now have him under contract for the next 3 seasons, and then he becomes a restricted free agent.
So that would be
after that
March of 24 then, right? Because this is 21, 22, and a season 23. That's 3 years.
Yes, right.
And
right.
then-
I believe instead of becoming an unrestricted free agent, which he would have, he didn't get accredited season.
Right. So he's
or an
restricted.
accrued season. Well, he's because he spent last year on the non-football injury list.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's probably. I actually wrote that down because that's the type of thing that even though I hear it, I'll forget it, and I feel like that's relevant information. Let's go. By the way, do you have another 5 minutes or so?
Yeah.
You got to run. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, good. So last year, well, let me start here. We know that the offense, they want to run the ball more, they say. Okay, who knows how that's going to play out, who's healthy, who's not, what they end up having to do. Last year, it was Carson and Hyde and DJ Dallas, all of whom got significant playing time. I mean, whether it was, somebody missing a whole game, couple of games, parts of games, whatever it was, they were all out there. What do you think the depth chart looks like right now behind Carson?
Well, they still got Rashad Penny there, and he's supposedly healthy. And so I think it's going to look like, at least in the top 2 spots, it's going to look kind of like it did in 2019 before Penny went down, where Carson is the guy, Penny is the number 2, and then I think they'll see about number 3 and 4. They've still got Homer and Dallas. I think both those guys are decent NFL running backs, but they're not early down guys. Those are more change of pace guys that are going to factor in on special teams. Alex Collins I think he's back on a minimum salary contract.
Oh, he is? Huh.
Yeah, he's there, but the minimum salary contract with no guaranteed money, so he's very much fighting for a roster spot, and he would be kind of more of the early down complement guy who can run between the tackles, big guy who can run with some power again. Whereas Dallas is not he's not a small guy. Homer is a smaller guy. Dallas is a little bit bigger, but I just don't think the Seahawks view them as early down guys. They're more so change of pace guys. Maybe they could, be there in 2-minute situations, third down situations. But in terms of the early down guys, it's Carson, Penny, and maybe Collins.
I have a follow-up on this, but I just mean stylistically, not in terms of how good they might be, but who is a good comparison for Rashad Penny and what he is supposed to be able to do? Because he's not a bruising Marshawn type runner, nor is he Chris Carson for that matter. But Carson can catch the ball too. But my impression was that Penny could do a handful of different things pretty well. Who would be a good comparison, do you think, in the NFL for that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. This is going to make Seahawks fans mad, I'm sure. But so the story I've heard is that in the 2018 draft, a lot of people in the Seahawks building were very high on Nick Chubb, the running back out of Georgia. Pete Carroll was among those guys. And what I've heard is that the Seahawks Chubb was their guy. They were going to draft Chubb. They switched to Penny sort of late in the game because they felt like one of the reasons was they felt like he was the much better pass catcher of the two, and they felt like he could be a Marshall Faulk type player. Remember, Faulk had also gone to San Diego State, so I think maybe that's why partly why the comparison was there, why I heard that name. But Chubb really didn't catch the ball a lot at Georgia, and it was odd to me why that would be the reason to favor Penny over Chubb. I mean, it makes sense because he's the better receiver, but this has not been an offense that really throws the ball to receivers as much as other NFL teams. And so it always seemed kind of
it seems like a very specific requirement for a first round pick. Like, oh, we love Chubb so much and we like Penny, but one's a bit better catching the ball than the other. So, I mean, I could see if it were like a third round pick, maybe you make that distinction between the two guys, but in the first round, like that is.
I mean, strange. I think in today's NFL, it makes sense, but it's just the Seahawks offense has not been one that features, running backs as pass catchers nearly as much. This is not like the New Orleans Saints or, the Rams. The screen game has always been a big part of their offense under Sean McVay. So, I mean, it sort of in general, it made sense, but it was weird that was such an issue for the Seahawks. Now, I think there were other reasons. They really, and this is sort of proven to. This certainly didn't play out the way they thought it would, but they'd given Penny one of the highest, maybe the highest medical grade they've ever given to a prospect, a draft prospect.
So, highest medical grade?
Medical grade, yeah, meaning their projection or their sort of evaluation of how healthy they are and their projection of how healthy they would stay in the NFL, and obviously that's. They've turned out to be wrong there because he's missed a ton of time, including a pretty serious knee injury in 2019. And so,
I mean, that is a hit and miss business to be in. Jeez.
Yeah. And, so it's a lot of times I think it's kind of silly to play you could have had this player, when observers look at a draft pick that a team missed on and said, oh, well, they should have known better. They should have had this guy instead. In this case, I think the criticism is valid, and I think they would tell you that they should have drafted Nick Chubb instead.
Well, one of the guys that they were criticized for not taking, I'm thankful that they didn't. That's Darius Geis, right? Because is he even with Washington? I think they cut him because he's had a whole host of problems off the field, like between shit happening to him and him doing God knows what to everybody else. So I'd prefer to have Penny over him. So I guess we can cross that off the list of guys that they passed on that they should have taken.
He was 2019 draft, wasn't he a year later?
Geis? No, yeah. I'm pretty sure he was the same year as Penny.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, you can look that up.
I'm still looking up the Darrell Taylor. I'm looking up the Darrell Taylor restricted free agent thing just to make sure.
Okay. The reason why I wanted to ask you about Penny there is because, and this is an academic question. It's not of the utmost importance at this point, but as a first round pick, whatever Penny ends up doing with his career, and hopefully he has, a fair amount of time left. He's a running back, so who knows how it's going to go. But he's already missed basically, he's played parts of 3 years, we'll just say. Do you think it's safe to say that as a first rounder, that pick is a bust?
At this point, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's partly. I think you give the player himself a little bit of slack because he's been injured, and so you don't know.
It's nothing against him, and I hope he may still be great, but the pick itself.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you draft a guy in the first round. The expectation is that he is your starter, and he's never been able to beat out Chris Carson. That's partly because Carson is a stud, and he's not a lot of guys would beat Chris Carson out. But yeah, I mean, I think between, the just not being able to stay healthy and not making a huge impact, I would say usually when this is the anytime you talk about the Seahawks and their less than stellar, certainly track record of drafting, first round draft picks, you always got to remember when you're picking as late in the first round as they are, and Penny was the 27th overall pick that year. That's kind of generally the range where when they have made first round picks, it's been late in the first round like that. Typically you're getting a second round talent because in most years there aren't 32 prospects in most drafts that NFL teams would, where the majority of teams would consider them a first round talent. So when you're picking 27th, 28th, 29th, even, 23rd, 24th is sort of a lot of times where that cutoff is. You're getting a second round talent. And that's why you see the Seahawks, because they're continually picking late in the first round. That's a big reason why you see them try to trade back, because the difference between a guy you could take at 27 versus 37 is not that great. But you can pick up, picks in the meantime by moving back. And so that's one thing I would, it's whenever you're talking about the Seahawks track record of first round picks, you got to remember all first round picks are not created equally.
Very true. And I think that's fair. The thing is, like, the first 3 rounds, though, are usually loaded with a lot of good NFL talent. Like, maybe in the second round, you've got some guys that more resemble third rounders, some second rounders that more resemble first rounders. But either way, you have plenty of great star players that are in those first 3 rounds. I guess my issue is not that their first rounders haven't become studs. It's that some of them are, borderline NFL players as it is. I mean, Malik McDowell, we don't know what he would have been, obviously. Was LJ Collier first or was he early second?
He was first, 29th.
Okay. I mean, even a player like him, and again, you hope, all right, well, something could come together for him. He was at least healthy last year, seemed to get a little bit better. It's more that it's a miss as a first rounder than it is like, oh, well, they picked in the first round, but this guy feels more like a late second rounder. I mean, do you think, knowing what we know about LJ Collier right now, that he would be drafted any earlier than like the 4th or 5th round?
Again, that's hard to say because the injuries make this such a tough. It makes it such a tough question. He missed most of his, or a big part of his rookie year with an injury.
But based on how he played last year, well, let me rephrase it. Based on how you saw him play last year, if he were a rookie last year, which he wasn't, what round of the draft would you expect that caliber of play out of? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I don't know exactly what round it was, but let's just say his rookie year never happened, and last year was his rookie year. If the Seahawks had drafted him in the second round, I wouldn't have thought that was any sort of reach. If they had drafted him,
that was a reach, you said?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that was any sort of a reach. That I would have thought, yeah, that's kind of what you should get from a second round guy, a guy who starts. He didn't make a ton of flash plays, although he was in on that game-saving play against New England. That goal line stand. It was a heck of a play by him. He was a pretty solid, steady guy for them last year.
I thought
Played a ton. So if you would have told me that he was a second-round pick, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought that okay, they got their money's worth there. And I think that going back to that when they actually drafted him, I would imagine that they had a second-round grade on him, but that was a situation where, remember, they traded Frank Clark. They already needed defensive ends, pass rushers, before they traded Frank Clark. And when they traded him, remember, that was a couple days before the draft. That was a massive hole on their roster. And so I think they were in a position where they had to take a defensive end early. And, maybe they weren't able to trade back. I don't know what it was. Maybe they felt like, I think what it was, now that I remember the reporting I did on it, is they felt like there was a huge drop-off from Collier to the next defensive end that they could have taken.
Yeah.
And so they just said, look, they're going to take him in the first round, even if it's maybe a bit of a reach, because the alternative is getting a guy who's not nearly as good as that later.
Right, and that was the offseason with the Jadeveon Clowney sweepstakes. And
right. That was before they signed Ziggy Ansah in May of that year. So after the draft, and then they didn't trade for Clowney until right before the season started.
Wait, Ziggy Ansah, did he played here in 2019 or 20?
Yeah. 2019.
19. Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask you if he was still on the team, but I guess I won't bother. How long do you think Dwayne Brown's career lasts from here on out, because I was actually talking to somebody online about the difference between John Schneider as a drafter versus like everything else he does, say acquiring free agents or whatever. And he's missed on both, he's hit on both. But that Dwayne Brown trade, in fact, most of the trades he's made, I think have been pretty damn good. So how many more years are we gonna, or is that trade gonna pay dividends, you think?
It all depends.
Indicated like in any way, like I'm getting
no. I was curious about the exact same thing you are, and I remember asking him last offseason, just where his head was at in terms of how much longer he wants to play, and he didn't really give any sort of. Maybe he knew it, but if he did know it, he didn't really give any indication, and maybe he didn't even know it. But he's under contract. This is the final season of his contract. He's going to be, I believe, 36 in August. So he'll be 36 by the time.
36 this August. Okay.
Yeah, 36 by the time the season starts. Now, we've seen guys play that position. Andrew Whitworth is, I think, a couple years older than Dwayne Brown, and he's still playing. So it's not unprecedented. And, Dwayne Brown still playing at a pretty high level. He was injured for, I think, part of 2019, but he was healthy for the most part last year. Still getting it done. But I would, and I'm no sort of expert on this, but I would imagine that at that age and at that size, maybe it can go pretty quickly. And so I think that's why you've seen the Seahawks, make moves like they've, signing Cedric Ogbuehi last year. They thought, they certainly by no means were counting on this. So I don't want anybody to hear this incorrectly, but when they signed him, they thought, hey, there's a chance that, maybe he could be their left tackle of the future. I think that's kind of what they're taking a look at with Stone Forsythe as well. I think they view him as, at the very least, he's going to be a swing tackle. So he's going to be, the Ogbuehi type, what Ogbuehi was for them last year. That he'll eventually be, a number 3 tackle, and maybe he's a starting left tackle of the future.
One last one, just back to last weekend. Was it last weekend with the DK Metcalf track race? I think it was last week.
It was 2 weeks.
Was it 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was on Mother's Day. Week and a half ago at this point.
Right.
Or
no, it's last
8 days ago.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. It's a little tricky. It's all right.
I don't know what day it is.
COVID, whatever. Do you get the feeling that, because I know based on everything I've read from you that Pete is like super supportive of this, as am I. Do you think that this will be something that DK pursues more in the future? Like that he'll try to make the Olympics at some point again, or where do you think he's going with that?
I'd like to know myself too, and I'm kicking myself because I missed a follow-up to Pete Carroll in a Zoom call the other day, and what I wanted to ask him is, because we haven't heard from Metcalf, we haven't had a chance to talk to him. We just heard the post-race interview with Lewis Johnson, but I wanted to ask Pete what DK has communicated to him about how far he wants to take this. And
do you think the Seahawks would at least be curious, even though they're encouraging him?
Yeah. And in one of the follow-ups I had to Carroll was, how would that work if this conflicts with, off-season stuff, training camp, mini camp, whatever that is. So we don't know. We can only guess. I know there was a story, I think in Yahoo, where they talked to somebody with USA Track and Field that had spoken with DK's agent, and the agent had communicated to this person from USA Track and Field that, Metcalf wanted to make Olympic trials this year. So I'm not sure if that is still in play for him, if this was, his only chance or his best chance to qualify. But whether it's this these Olympic Games or the next one, I think it would be cool. And, Carroll clearly thinks it's cool. And he's always been a guy. Carroll has always been an advocate for, youth, athletes in their youth to not specialize in one sport.
Oh, yeah.
He wants them to play. I don't think he's a fan of the, AAU, playing one sport year round. I think he's always advocated for guys to do a lot. And so maybe that's part of the thinking here. And, the other thing is, look, let's face it, guys can do a lot of stuff in the off season that puts them at risk.
Yep.
Playing basketball, riding ATVs,
getting in a car.
Yeah, and of all of the activities that a guy could be spending his off season doing, I imagine that, training for the 100 meters is probably the most productive thing and the safest thing that a guy could do training wise. And so I imagine that that's probably another reason why Carroll loves it, because he knows that this is going to be good for Metcalf as a football player, and it's not something that's going to, put him in harm's way.
Yeah, I mean, the Tokyo Olympics, I think they're rescheduled for the summer, aren't they? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which month they are, but so it might be a little cutting it close on that. But, say he wants to do it in 2024. I don't know because I know sometimes depending on the Olympic site, like the host city, sometimes it's in like August or September or July. I mean, that could get in the way of, say, training camp. I wonder if he qualified for the Olympics 4 years, or I guess 3 years from now, assuming they leave it on schedule, and it were in August, do you think that you don't think they'd fine him for missing training camp, do you?
Boy, that would be a fascinating story.
It's up to the team. It's not like a league rule, is it?
Well, now I believe that yeah, I think when a guy is under contract and doesn't show up to training camp, I'm don't quote me on this because it could be wrong, but I think it is now teams have to
really
find players. Yeah. And this is when you're talking about holdout situations.
Right.
So I don't know how that would work if say the team, gave him, excuse his absence. I also, that would get tricky because now you're setting kind of a weird precedent, of letting guys miss training camp
for various reasons
pursue their own interests. Yeah. Outside of football.
So. How many Olympians,
right,
Olympian football players are we talking about here?
Yeah. It's definitely a unique situation. And who knows what'll happen. And maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't heard from DK himself about what he wants to do. But I think it's cool for him. It was just a cool deal, I think, for all involved. And, I think the guy who wrote the Yahoo story made this point, and it's a great one. This is great for, regardless of how he fared in that event, it would have been great for track and field because
oh yeah,
I can't say that I would have been watching a USA track and field event on a Sunday or any day if DK Metcalf wasn't there. So it got it got eyes on the sport. And if Metcalf, say he would have got smoked, I think that would have given viewers an appreciation for how fast those sprinters are, where we think of DK Metcalf as having this otherworldly speed, and he does, because we see it on the field on Sundays. And then to see him, if these guys are just, leaving him in the dust, then I think that would give people a greater appreciation for professional sprinters. And if he did well, like he did, it gives you, I think, more of an appreciation for how fast DK Metcalf is. And it was just a cool deal all around. I thought he handled himself really well post race. He wasn't. He was very deferential, and I'll say this too. I remember
respectful, like reverential, really.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's what I meant to say. What did I say?
He was very.
I say deferential. I meant
reverential. Yeah.
Yes, he was treating those guys with a lot of respect, and I think it's just really cool that he tried that in the first place. And I say that I remember when I was in high school, Tom, and guys took the sprinters on the track team in high school. They were so prideful of how fast they were and the times they ran, and it seemed to me like a lot of times when guys would get beat, the top guys, you'd see a lot of guys grabbing their hamstrings, and maybe sometimes it was legit, but it seemed like guys would oh, my hamstring, that's because that's an easier getting hurt. I think that's an excuse that guys use for getting beat. And so this is in high school. Now you're talking about on a big stage like this where, there's a lot of people watching, he really stuck his neck out,
I mean, absolutely. I forgot that he was doing it that day, but I guess just to try to do some revisionist analysis, like I would have guessed that maybe he would have come in a second, maybe 2 seconds behind the leader. He was a quarter of a second behind them and it was ninth and was tied with the guy who was in eighth. I mean, he would have won the race by probably 6 seconds if all of the runners had to put on pads and a helmet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or if they were all, 230, 240 pounds.
Right.
Yeah. The weight, a lot of these guys, I was looking up some of the weights of these guys. I think that the top two guys, one was like, they were well under 200 pounds, like 160, 170 in that sort of range.
So we're talking like 100, like what, an 80 to 100 pound difference. How much does he weigh?
He's, I think, 230 or something.
Oh, he's 230.
Like
okay, I thought he was like 2. Okay, so
yeah, maybe 240. I'm not entirely sure,
right.
But he's got a lot of weight on these guys, and he has only been training for the 100 since the season ended, and he did track in high school, but he was not running the 100. I think he was a hurdler and either a high jumper, and so. This is, so he's probably a lot less skilled in some of the technical stuff, is what I'm trying to say. In addition to being, a lot heavier than these guys. So it just made the way he finished, just made it all the more impressive.
I think one of those amps I have behind me there might be around 80 pounds. I mean, that's like, he basically had to run that race carrying one of those things.
Yeah. And maybe with a guitar strapped around his shoulder too.
Oh God, that's one of the things about gigging, like playing live music, that I don't miss is hauling that shit around. Jesus, I'm sorry. What one? Fuck. One last one. Sorry. This kid, Wontarius Bryant. Did you read this story about him? He was the kid who there was that hoax, and I'm going to talk about it right after I let Brady go here. But I guess what I want to know is. So just quick story. This kid who was an undrafted free agent thought that he had been invited to Atlanta Falcons rookie mini camps. And when he showed up, they were like, we don't know who you are. I'm sorry if there was a mix up. And he claimed, this Wontarius Bryant, that it was a hoax because somebody claiming to be a Falcons coach was texting him, giving him invites to show up. Like, hey, we want to work you out. We want you to, and he wrote a very sincere, what I thought heartfelt explanation of the situation, and so I really felt for him. My question is, if you're a veteran, you've got an agent, so the teams reach out to the agent, to say, hey, is so-and-so interested in, coming to camp? But for undrafted rookies, what would the protocol be? Would a coach reach out directly to a player like that, or would it be a GM or head coach and goes through some, like an intermediary, or how would that normally work? Because you couldn't get a veteran to fall for this because they'd probably be like, well, why is this guy not texting my agent? Like, this kid probably just didn't know the difference as an undrafted rookie. And he was like, okay. So like, what's the normal chain of events there?
I'm not sure exactly how that would work. What I think would happen is somebody in the front office would reach out to the agent.
Yeah.
And
if you got an agent.
Right. And assuming he has an agent, which he did in this case. And that's the part of the story that is hard for me to wrap my head around is.
Well, I'm sorry, you said he does have an agent? We know this?
He does. He does.
I didn't even see it. Okay.
And unless he hired an agent after the fact, which I don't know why he would have. The story I read referenced him having an agent. And what I can't comprehend is, where was the agent in this?
Yeah, there was no conversation?
Right. So normally I think what happens is the team, usually somebody from the front office, would reach out to the agent and say, we would like to bring your guy in for a tryout. But the kid's not going to know any better. He's not going to know what the protocol is. And so I can understand why he would think it's legit if he gets a text from somebody claiming to be, I think it's Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator. But what I don't understand is, I imagine that the player would then communicate that to his agent, and the agent, that should tip off something in the agent's head that's not right. Cause usually, they reach out to the agent. Maybe it's maybe it's an inexperienced agent. I don't know, but I'm wondering why the agent didn't
step in,
sense something. Yeah, sense something amiss there. Also the fact that it was a text message too.
Not even a phone call. Yeah,
right. Typically, that would be handled regardless of who was telling whom. That would be a phone call because you would want to hammer out some of the details and whatnot. So I'm just left wondering where the agent was in all of this, because it seemed like the agent should have been the one to sense that something was not right.
That is weird. I mean, for him, let's say he got the text himself, to not notify assuming he had the agent beforehand, to not notify his agent that he's on his way to Falcons training camp. I forget where he said he was from, because he had to travel from wherever he was to get down there. But you don't think that this is like a hoax of a hoax, do you?
I mean, me. You're kind of the same way. We question everything, and that was one thought I had. Is, I mean, I don't know why. I don't know what would compel him to make up a story about a hoax, but I mean, I just, because it's so hard to believe that the agent wouldn't step in there. So I mean, I don't think that that's what happened, but
yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking of how this could have happened, and it's wild and it's unfortunate. The kid probably got his hopes up and was excited to go and try to make a team, and only to, probably there is a cost associated with getting from point A to point B too. And so it's just
and that's another thing, like assuming that the team would normally cover travel expenses. I don't know if they reimburse or do it beforehand, but like that didn't set off an alarm in his head. Like, oh, I have to get there on my own nickel. Like, should I hitchhike?
Or the agent. Yeah. Again, that's where it's a hard, I don't understand how that could happen.
I think I'm going to tomorrow morning, I'm going to show up at KJR, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm Tom Wassel here to see program director. Yeah, you guys, you said I'm here for my shift. Oh, you weren't texting me yesterday? That's weird. Well, now that I'm here, you want to just let me on the air? No, I don't want to do
that. You want me to text you from my work phone? That way you can just have the visual proof there that somebody invited you.
Yeah, right. I'll put you in my phone as like KJR program director.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right, Brady, you've been more than generous with your time tonight. I really appreciate it, bro.
Yeah.
What are you working on this week? Anything for ESPN.com people should keep a lookout for?
Working on a story about the Daryl Taylor stuff that we talked about. So I think that'll run on Thursday. Okay,
cool. Hopefully he stays injury-free and works hard enough to get on the field and make a difference. Thanks, Brady. Appreciate it.
You bet, brother. See you.
All right, man. Take care. Brady always with fantastic information. That is a weird story, is it not? So, again, for those of you who missed it, Wontarius Bryant, whose Twitter handle, by the way, is @TheyLoveMyHair. I haven't actually seen a picture of his hair. I'll look at that after. He tweeted out, he said, "It's been a rough few days, but I felt the need to clear the air and get this off my chest. Honestly, ready to move on from the situation." So that was the tweet. And then he tweeted out a picture. It's like a screenshot of this letter that he's writing. It's like an open letter to everybody. I'll just read it. It's not that long. He says, "I want to say thank you to everyone who has been in my corner while I've been pursuing my lifelong dream of playing in the NFL. Apparently, the opportunity of attending rookie minicamp with the Atlanta Falcons was not a legit opportunity. Someone contacted me from a 404 area code number pretending to be Dean Pease, the DC for the Atlanta Falcons. I did not realize it was not a legitimate opportunity until I traveled to the facility for rookie minicamp check-in on Wednesday, May 12th. It's most definitely one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me and a very humbling experience. Just want to apologize to everyone and the Atlanta Falcons organization for the mix-up. I honestly thought it was a legit opportunity on my end." Then one more quick paragraph. "I I do not know or understand why this has happened, but I do know that everything happens for a reason. Yes, this was heartbreaking for me, but just another stepping stone that I'm not afraid to admit or overcome. At the end of the day, this will not make or break me. I will still continue to fight for my dreams because I know it's what I really want. I'm still striving and I'm still in the best shape of my life. When opportunity presents itself, I will be ready. Wontarius Bryant. Well, look, I guess of all the guesses or assumptions that I can make here, a hoax as perpetrated and set up by him will be my last resort. In other words, I'll believe that when there's proof of it. So assuming that what he says here is true, my heart breaks for him. I don't know where he's from, and I don't know how long it took him or how expensive it was for him to get to Georgia, wherever the Falcons have their training camp. I don't know if it's in Atlanta or not. I mean, if this is a traditional hoax, like somebody was basically catfished him, so whether it was somebody who knew him or somebody who was trying to get a good laugh or whatever it is, as I said on Twitter the other day, that person is going straight to hell. That is a shitty thing to do. I mean, it's one thing, like Brady and I are buddies. Brady Henderson, who I was just talking to there. I don't know. Maybe I contact him somehow. I say, hey, I'm, some girl that you're interested in, or, and I have a quick joke, and then I let him know that it was me, and, within, I don't know, a few hours, and I don't know. It's just something stupid. I'm not a big fan of pranks as it is nowadays, just because they can go so wrong, and when I was in high school, it was one thing, but not now. So whoever did this, Jesus, this is his lifelong dream. He's undrafted, which tells me that, he's not so talented that he can just walk right into the NFL. This is just something he really wanted to do. He works his ass off to try to, keep in shape. So if the opportunity were to present itself, he'd be ready to go. Whether this is look, I suppose it could be an enemy of his that tried to just humiliate him. It could be a friend of his who thought that they were doing it in good fun, but just didn't have their head screwed on straight and didn't see that it was actually cruel. But as far as his apologies, he says, just want to apologize to everyone and the Atlanta Falcons. From me to you, Mr. Bryant, you have nothing to be sorry for whatsoever. Nothing. In fact, I don't know what the rules are on this. Maybe there's a finite number of players that are allowed at rookie minicamps. But if I were the Falcons and I was, who the hell's their coach now that they got? Is it Raheem Morris still? Hold on. Hold, please. Atlanta. I thought they hired somebody else. Arthur Smith, somebody I've never heard of. I know Raheem Morris was their interim last year after Quinn got fired. But if I were them, if I were Arthur Blank, Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith, I'd have let him in. It's like, geez, he came, like, remember in Major League, remember Willie Mays Hayes? He just kind of showed up at the Cleveland Indians training camp. I don't know if he thought he was, I forget in that movie if he thought he was invited or if he just showed up. But, they let him in. They got him a uniform. I know it's a movie. It's fictional. It's okay. I understand. But you get my point. It's like, God, this kid came all this way. One thing if he lived down the street. Down where the VMAC is, there's a bunch of houses down there. If there was somebody who was wanting to make the Seahawks team and lived down the block and just showed up, they'd be like, all right, thanks, but no thanks. You can, enjoy the weather. But if he had to actually travel a great distance to get there, and he's got any kind of talent, at least has the appearance of being in good shape, brings his equipment, etc. They could tell that he's serious. Why not just let him in? I mean, who knows what's going to come of it? Maybe it's just a workout. Maybe he makes a connection, a contact. He has an opportunity to network or something. I'm a little, again, rules notwithstanding, I'm a little surprised the Falcons didn't take him in. I mean, if he went all that way and then had to, I don't know if he flew in, drove, or what, but then had to drive or fly back, and it was more than like a day trip. I mean, did the Falcons at least put him up anywhere? Arthur, say what you want about NFL owners. I know a lot of people, old rich white man. But Arthur Blank, and I haven't not met him personally, but he's commonly regarded as one of the more gentlemanly owners in the league, right? You see shots of him, standing sort of with a forlorn look on his face after the Falcons blow their latest playoff game, and I feel so bad for him. Kind of reminds me of Sal Tessio from The Godfather. Remember him? Remember Sal Tessio, played by Abe Vigoda? Looks kind of like him, but he's supposed to be a pretty nice guy, like good-hearted, good-natured. So I'm surprised at that. Like Brady said there, though, and I didn't realize until Brady told me that Bryant had an agent. I thought he didn't, in which case it's understandable that he thought direct contact was being made from the Falcons to his phone. Now, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. God, what would be the equivalent? Oh, okay, I guess a job opportunity. Say, I don't know, WSCR. It's the Score. It's a sports talk radio station in Chicago. It's like their KJR. They have ESPN 1000 and the Score. So WSCR. Let's say I got a text, and I've applied for a job there before. Let's say I got a text from so-and-so. Hey, it's program director at the Score. Hey, we're interested in having you come in for an interview. Want to schedule a time? If I were asked that over text, or email for that matter, how would I know that it's from that? If it's an email, you could probably verify it one or two ways. If it's just a text, I wouldn't hop on a plane just based on that. Something would have to be formalized. And granted, I have the life experience of a 42-year-old person, including 16 years in sports media, like in the workforce. So I know what kinds of things to look for at this point. If he's 20 years old, 21 years old, he may not know any of this. In fact, I can remember, you remember those scams that they used to run maybe 15, 20 years ago where you'd see them in classified ads, hey, stuff envelopes for $25 an hour, or some kind of, data entry thing. Hey, we'll pay you $25 an hour to just do nothing. I was not smart enough at age 20 or 21 to know that was not a legitimate business and to know that it was a scam or it was at least fake, right? Because there was nothing telling me, there was nothing that I knew before that telling me that stuffing envelopes was not a legitimate line of work. I didn't know. My first foray into the workforce. Oh, in fact, by the way, I don't even think I was looking online back then. I think I was just looking through like classified ads. So what the hell did I know? And if somebody contacted me unsolicited, like even if I hadn't applied for the job again, if I'm 20, I may not be able to see through that. Now I hope that I would. I wouldn't be, so wishful about it that I just show up at somebody's door. And I think with Wontarius Bryant, again, assuming this is all true, I think by the time he's 42, he will know the difference as well. I suppose I should explore the possibility. Just what would the ramifications be if this were a hoax that he concocted? Again, what would be the motivation? Well, based on the letter he wrote here, I mean, he comes off as a very sincere, hardworking, good-natured person. And also misfortunate because this happened to him, right? Or so he wants us to think. I guess maybe he'd be hoping that a team or an agent might see this and be like, oh, that's a shame. Let's give him a shot. I guess that could be true. And again, the fact that he made this public is a little curious. I mean, he says, it's been a rough few days, but I felt the need to clear the air and get this off my chest. And then he says, honestly ready to move on from this situation. Get it off my chest. Maybe it's possible that he was getting so many questions about it. Hey, how'd practice go? Or how'd the Falcons go? That he just had to be public about it. That's if it did happen. If it didn't, I guess it could be some kind of ploy. I mean, if it were a hoax, it's certainly not a hoax for fun. There's got to be some advantage to it, I would think. But, even if let's say he arranged this falsehood, right, and lied here, just made some shit up. If he went and worked out with a team and actually made the team and ended up with a career in the NFL, I suppose good for him. But he would have to live with that lie the rest of his life. Because think about it. Every player has their own story. And one like this would be a pretty famous one, ultimately. Like, hey, oh yeah, he was the guy that, he was the victim of a hoax and he showed up with the Falcons. That's memorable. So this is a lie he'd have to stand by and refine for years to come. That would be terrible. And hopefully he would have learned his own lesson by that. But again, not for now. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he did not make this up, and he should have seen the warning signs or red flags or of whatever communication he was receiving. But young person, inexperienced, doesn't know what to look for. I just as an observer, I can let that slide. When Brady and Todd and I were out the other night having a dinner, we were talking about this one person who was actually a compulsive liar. Speaking of lies, and I just happened to mention, I said, because look, we all tell little white lies here and there, but being that none of us are perfect, most of us have probably lied in a pretty big way at one time or another in our lives, right? And to me, the lesson I learned from having done that a handful of times in my life, not only was don't lie, but if you're going to do it, don't lie about something that you have to keep on fabricating over periods of time, because you're not going to be able to remember everything you said. You got to do it about something that's open and shut. If Constance asked me, hey, did you go to the grocery store and get dog food? Or did you get dog food like I asked you to? I mean, I don't know why I would lie about that if I didn't, but let's just say I say no. I say, yes, I did, and I didn't. I could remedy that by just going out real quick, getting it, coming through the door, and when it comes time to feed them, just act like nothing happened. I could fix that, no harm, no foul. But again, don't lie about stuff like that. Like, what's the point? Hey, Tom, did you get dog food? Oh, no, I forgot. Sorry. Oh, okay. It is so much better to be forgiven for whatever you did or didn't do than to, forget about even being caught in a lie. That's bad, obviously. But to me, like, I've said a number of times on the air, on this show or whatever, I try to conduct myself in an honest way, whether that means, not being disingenuous with what I say or, not lying outright. The biggest reason for that, especially now with some life experience behind me, and now that I'm on the back nine of life, is that it just makes you feel like shit when you do it. You feel terrible about yourself. I mean, it's got to do something to your self-respect. I know it did to me when I would do it. Never mind the fact that you're disrespecting and degrading in a way the person you're lying to, because obviously you don't think that they're, adroit enough to call you on it or to realize what you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes. So it introduces a whole new set of problems that nobody needs. It's not good. It's not good. Tell the truth. If you need to lie by omission on occasion, like, not being forthcoming about every last detail, I get it. I don't want to know everything. It's fine. But tell the truth. Who was the guy that never lied? George Washington? He's a good guy, I think. Anyway. All right. I've been having some audio problems the last couple of weeks. I hope that... You guys hear that? Hopefully it's working right this time. Subscribe, rate, review if you're listening on the podcast. Thanks to Believe for hosting these podcasts. The wonderful folks at Believe. Also, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, subscribe, rate, review, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments, whatever you want. I got nothing better to do. I'm always happy to engage people, and if you leave a comment, be it on Twitter or YouTube or at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you want to do it. Throw me a bone. Give me a comment or two. Tom, you're great. Tom, you suck. Whatever it is. Take care, everybody. Hey, something I actually forgot. I have been working on a bit of music lately, and I thought if you've stuck around this long, maybe I'd give you a little bonus track. Ooh, a little bonus track. Let me do something here real quick. I'm just going to... I write my music on this program. It's called Reason. And I've actually showed you guys this before. It's a synthesizer program. And I am now going to hope that this works the right way. Let's see. Can you guys hear that? Yeah, you can. That's good. All right. That's the demo song. That's not my song. All right. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull this song up. Okay. Hang with me. Again, if you're watching this on on demand, it's really no big deal that I'm screwing around with this right now. I'm doing this just kind of for fun. It's no big deal. All right. So here, let's try this. All right, so what you're looking at there is see how each little unit there has like a little screw or a nail like in the top left corner. That's what I was talking about when I was saying, like, if I had a rack next to me, like a rack mount, and I could stick all these different machines, like here's one machine, here's another machine, here's two more machines, 3, 4, like they would all physically stack on top of one another. And what this synthesizer software does is it emulates all those things. So you got your mixer, one synthesizer, a reverb unit, an arpeggiator, delay, another synthesizer. Here's my drum computer. I can program. What did I do here? That's one drum beat I used there. You can use as many as you want, by the way. Here's another synthesizer, a drum loop machine. And you can change that any way you want. Here's, what is this? Right. So then what drum beat did I do here? I forgot. So depending on the song, in the section within the song, you can see down here on below where all these like bars are. I don't use every instrument at once. You can see how they're kind of stacked in different sections. So at the beginning of the song, all I have is this handful of things. And then as it goes on, if you've ever edited audio, you probably get the idea here. But these are all the different parts. So let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so then, this machine in front of me here, this yellowish machine, this is what's called a mastering unit, where you can just alter the compression and the overall sound quality of something. Here's another drum beat. What was this? So that was another section. Here's another drum computer. What did Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. What else? That sound is called an arpeggiator, as in arpeggio. So what it does is it takes one note, say like a C, and it goes. You can set it any way you want, really. I've got it. Let's see. All right, what else we got here? Anything else interesting? This synthesizer up top here that I'm using. So this is a very sort of like ethereal sound. This is what's called, this one right in front of you, that's called a mellotron. It's got all kinds of different settings, but it gives you kind of like the sound of what a chorus would sound like. Oops. Wrong one. Wrong sound. This one. Or if you want, you can change it around. So this is going to sound like strings now. Choose from whatever you want. What do I got here? Big strings. Let's see what that sounds like. Kind of cool. Let's see what else we got. Clavinet. Farfisa, Oregon. This is like a 60s sounding thing. And then this is the one I had it set at. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play this. Let me just make sure everything is set the way it should be. Okay, it appears so. All right, so let's do... I'm not embarrassed. I guess I'm not that bashful. Oh, you know what? I got to make sure that this is not... that we don't have drums on top of drums. Okay, get rid of that. That's good. Get rid of that. And okay. All right. Here it is. Hope you enjoy. leave a review. Let me know if you thought that was worth a damn, or what you thought. I was pretty psyched up about it. All right, everybody, take care. Adios.